Well, hello, everybody. This is Matt Deliberato from the Deliberato Law Center in Cleveland, Ohio, and this is your estate planning law cast. Sorry, I got that a little wrong there. And with me today is,
Andrew Jaloza from the Estate Planning and Elder Law Group here in Queens, New York. And yes, this is Queens to Cleveland, our estate planning lawcast. Imagine listening to two attorneys banter about estate planning in both of our different cities, talking about the differences and things like that. And today we're going to talk about irrevocable trusts, Matt.
and I
Irrevocable trusts.
and I can't believe this is episode number 6. So if you're still listening, we love you.
Exactly. And hopefully you're more than our family members.
Right, right, exactly. Well, that's great. Yes, irrevocable trust, kind of a fun topic. I would like to pick up just where we kind of left off. And what is a trust, Andrew?
Well, the trust is it's literally a little red wagon, but I'll explain that in a second. So what a trust is, it's an entity you create by creating an agreement that allows you to transfer ownership of property to it so that you can have a different relationship to your property. And it's important to do that for several different reasons. Matt, you want to elucidate?
Yes, I would love to. I think that just to add on that, we're talking about irrevocable trusts. Revocable trusts are what I call the can trust, right? You can be a beneficiary, you can be a trustee, you can amend it, you can. Whereas the irrevocable trust is really the cannot trust, right? You cannot be a trustee, you cannot be a beneficiary for most instances, right? And you can't amend it, you can't change it, you can't terminate it. And so people always ask, well, why would someone do a trust like that? And really, it's most of those people who have estate tax problems. And so maybe we'll tackle that one first. When you do an irrevocable trust, the assets that you put in there come out of your estate, and therefore it is a completed gift. So when we give those assets to a trust, it comes out of our estate and may help us with estate tax issues. What are some other things, Andrew?
Well, like you said, we use it for estate tax avoidance. We use it for creating charitable gifting away
Yes.
during lifetime so that you're doing more advanced planning when you have above average type of estates. We have, Q-tip trusts are also irrevocable trusts where we do interspousal transfer so that we can protect the family home using a pretty significant asset protection trust. And asset protection is really what we're talking about, right? So
Yes.
asset protection in the form of lowering the tax exposure or lowering your exposure to predators and creditors. So creditors may attach to something that you have a beneficial interest in, and by removing your beneficial interest, that's how we create asset protection from you from your property being subject to collection from future claims or creditors.
And always the big caveat right there is we can't protect against current claims or creditors, right? So this is stuff you have to do before you get in a situation with a creditor or a lawsuit.
Exactly. Cannot protect. Here in New York, I cannot protect against current claims and creditors with the New York Trust.
Same here.
So yeah,
Same here.
pretty
Yep.
simple. And as Matt talked about, there are that there are very serious restrictions for that type of trust, which is basically an estate tax avoidance trust, is how we usually refer to those kind of trusts, because mostly they're done for removing property of the estate to avoid having to pay the high estate tax, whether your state has an estate tax or not. New York does have an estate tax. How about Ohio?
No, we've eliminated in 2013, and I don't think it'll come back. It's one of those taxes where our maximum was 7%, and it started at, I think, like 338,000, but it's gone now. Where does
Yeah.
yours start?
Ours now starts at almost 5.9 million, 5,890,000 per
Ah,
person. You have to do some planning to protect your lifetime credit, which is that 5,890,000. The first one of a couple to pass away, you need to do some planning to carry that forward. Whereas the federal limit is much higher at this point. At this point, it's nearly $13 million a person, and the first to die's credit is easily ported over to the survivor. So there are high limits, but in New York, if you're 5% over that 5,890,000, so somewhere around 6,000,000 too, you're paying tax on the entire estate at a minimum of 3%, up to
Oh,
when
wow.
you have more than 10 million, you're at 16.2%. And
Oh
that's
my
for the
gosh.
entire estate. It's not just the marginal rate above the tax rate, which if you have a lot of money, you need to talk to someone like us to help
Hmm.
protect you from having to pay that estate tax on property you probably already have been taxed against already,
Well, and really
right?
important to remember too, I have got a lot of clients, we're close to Pennsylvania, so they have trailers or houses. And Pennsylvania has an estate tax. So all of you who have property in other states, it's very important to plan to make sure that that estate tax can be avoided or minimized.
Yeah, and Pennsylvania actually has an inheritance tax, and so does New Jersey. They have inheritance taxes. So it's not
Mm,
just really taxing on the estate, it's taxing on who gets it, like how they're related to the person who passed away and how much money or property is there. So it's there's a couple of qualifying things, and nearly everybody. So when you own property and you live in another state, you're going to pay tax in Pennsylvania. That's how it works.
yes.
So
Yes, no doubt. Absolutely. Well, and we're both kind of squished. Well, we're right. Pennsylvania squished in the middle of us, so we probably both have issues in Pennsylvania. But
yeah,
I know there's other states that have taxes too. So
yeah,
definitely something to consider and use. Also, probate avoidance, right? We can avoid probate with an irrevocable trust. We can do that with a revocable trust as well, which can save time and money for your beneficiaries. We've had an episode on probate. If you haven't seen it, listen to it. You probably should go back and listen to it. It's just the time, energy, and money in probate that we can hopefully avoid.
true. And that's why we use trust, because if you own property in a trust and you own it in several different states, you will avoid having to do a probate in all of those states. Because
Yes.
when you have a will and you die and you own property in multiple states, you first have to do a probate proceeding in the state you died, and then you will have to take those papers and submit them in the other states that you have property, or the other places in the world, because many international clients who have dual citizenships and property abroad can pass on their property by taking a properly probated will and submit it in the courts, their surrogates court in the local country, and pass on their property. But that really means multiple probates.
Yes, absolutely. And as in every trust we do, Andrew, we preach and preach and preach that you love your beneficiaries way too much to give them money. You love them enough to give them a trust. So we can control or have control over asset distribution, right? We can specify how assets are to be distributed after their death. And therefore, we can protect those family members by giving them a trust. And that happens with minor children, special needs children, right? We have just general reasons why we don't want to leave them money. We want to leave them a trust.
Well, you may not want to leave them the money also, because they may be spend the money too fast, like a spendthrift trust.
Ah,
The kid
yes.
you give $1 to, he spends 10, or the one who has a gambling problem that you don't really know about, and all of a sudden, whatever money you've given to him now belongs to the bookmaker or I mean, it's easy to gamble today like never before. So it
Yes.
really is a scary thought. Or people about to go into a nursing home, family members you love, you give them money and they're about to go into the nursing home. Now they have another problem, that money you gave them. So there's ways of
Yes.
doing that to create protection forward into the future, as well as protecting yourself against the claims and creditors and the things that may happen, including car accidents, right? Car accidents
Yes.
and death are something that happens all the time. We don't generally think about it happening to us. We have car insurance, we have insurance for that, right? But that insurance is generally 100 to $300,000, and if you kill somebody accidentally with your car, they're suing you for a lot more than that, right?
Oh, sure. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. And
And you're not covered.
no, my mother-in-law was in a car accident actually in Indiana, and she turned left, and this motorcycle was coming at an outrageously high speed, but doesn't matter. She turned left in front of him. And of course, his attorney went after her personally. And she said to me, well, my house is protected, isn't it? I said, no, remember that trust we keep talking about that we never did? Fortunately, she didn't lose her home, but lawsuits happen to everybody all the time. You know, I always say the courts are closing, right? Nobody's suing anybody anymore. Well,
Yeah.
no, not
Right.
at all, right? It
Never,
is
never.
more lawsuits being filed today than ever.
Yeah. We don't all get along. That's for
Right,
sure.
right,
We don't do
right.
that. And so planning for passing your property on as well. The capital gains tax on appreciated property. Trust is a
Yes,
useful element in your estate plan because passing things on once you've passed away allows you to also pass on the appreciation in your house, your stock accounts, other things that you purchased at a lower price and now over time have appreciated without you having to pay any taxes on the gain. When you pass it to your family, if you give it them the basis or what you paid for it as their basis, they're going to pay capital gains tax. Whereas when you pass it on after you pass away, they take on the date of death value as their basis. And so they avoid paying all of that capital gains tax, right?
exactly, exactly. And you know, not only are there flexible terms, but I think we can also potentially, I don't want to say that this is always true, but try to avoid any family disputes, right? By specifying your assets and how they're to be distributed. You can help avoid family disputes over the inheritance. Although I always say green is thicker than red. We all know that certainly there's going to be potentially some disruption in the family, but a trust will help, especially an irrevocable trust will help avoid that family dispute.
Yeah, and I think that it's harder to dispute a trust that you've created and lived
Yes.
with for a number of years than a will where they're going to test your soundness of mind, especially if you've made recent changes to it and things like that. It's a lot easier to fight when you're already in court, like with that probate process, than it
Yeah.
is to fight the validity of a trust that's created.
For sure, for sure. And
Yeah.
also charitable giving, right? We can give charitable distributions and receive tax benefits. Although that's a plus for revocable and irrevocable because charitable contributions are typically get a tax benefit. But certainly something to consider when you're doing a trust. I think a lot of times charitable giving is overlooked. And sometimes that's our fault as attorneys, right? We just say, okay, who's your beneficiaries? And we don't address the topic. People are very giving during their lifetime, and they should show their kids, their beneficiaries, how charitable they were during their lifetime and why it's so important to be charitable.
Right. Including, making gifts to for your pets, right? People have pets.
Hmm.
They want to set up something so that someone will have the money to be happier, to be the watch, the new owner or the new caretaker for their pets. They set up these pet trusts as well. And so that's another way that happens, that we can forward into the future to create things that will live on after us, including the nice part about doing a charitable bequest is that you're doing a good thing. You also can
Yes.
do good things for the animals and others that you love to help them as well. And charitable giving trusts also create, like Matt said, tax benefits during your lifetime against the income that you have. So it helps to reduce the income taxes that you have to pay during your lifetime. So there is an immediate benefit as well as benefits to your family by reducing taxation too.
And don't forget, we're talking about irrevocable trusts. And so one of the downsides to that is loss of control. When you do an irrevocable trust, you cannot be the trustee. You don't have control over these assets. But there's really obviously some specific reasons why you might want to do one, but also don't get this loss of control. This is something that you really have to consider when you're dealing with irrevocable trusts.
And I'm going to throw a little monkey wrench into our conversation, right? So
Okay.
there are really two types of irrevocable trusts. We
Very
have
good.
grantor trusts and we have non-grantor trusts. See, a revocable living trust is a grantor trust because the grantor owns the property. It's just a probate avoidance mechanism. It does other good things about changing control if you get disabled or you die. So there is really a great need for a revocable trust somewhere in your life, right? So everything is not for everybody at every time. Irrevocable trust, if you have a risky profession where you're concerned about lawsuits, or you're getting older and you start thinking about long-term care issues and you're wondering protection against long-term care costs and getting some access to Medicaid, despite the fact that you have so many assets, that's how we use irrevocable trust as well. We're not going to talk about Medicaid in this episode. We're going to talk about Medicaid in more depth at a future episode. But there is a difference between an irrevocable grantor trust and an irrevocable non-grantor trust. So,
Yes, very important.
yeah, and do you wanna take that?
Sure. I think that, in the irrevocable grantor trust, you get to retain all this control. So that's a great time to talk about it, right? Because we're talking about losing control with an irrevocable trust, but that's in a non-grantor setting. In a grantor setting, you do get to keep control. And again, we will go over those in depth in another episode. So maybe look for the one on the asset protection trust if you're really interested, because what it really does is get your 5-year clock ticking, right, for Medicaid. And that's really important for a lot of us to make sure that we don't spend every penny we work for our entire life.
Yeah.
And that's something that we can help navigate the waters with and tell you exactly what is entailed and what not. I always say, Andrew, I don't know if you believe this or not, but the revocable is the can trust, right? We said we can do things. The irrevocable is the cannot, and the irrevocable grantor is what I call the answer, right? You get all the benefits of the revocable with only one negative of an irrevocable trust. And by doing so, you can protect against creditors, predators, lawsuits, nursing homes, all that fun stuff.
And that one thing that Matt's talking about is the ability to take the property directly back to yourself.
Yes.
So as long as you don't use the money in or the property other than real property, because we often give you the right to stay in your real property and live there for the rest of your life, so you stay in control, regardless of whom you name the trustee. Because in New York, you can be the trustee of your own irrevocable grantor trust. And that
Yes.
will not affect your asset protection, nor will it affect your eligibility for Medicaid. Just because we have different types of, I think, rules than maybe Ohio does.
Yeah, Ohio, you can be a trustee, although I did get a Medicaid application back just this past week that they're saying that because they're trustees, they're denying the trust. Well, it's just someone in Medicaid who doesn't know what they're talking about. There's no reason for that. And we have provisions that we can remove the grantors as trustee in case of disability. So there's, where there's a will, there's a way, right? We get around all these things and rules, and it's a very complex set of rules and exceptions, and so we need to make sure that we are following the rules very specifically when we do asset protection.
Right.
Good.
Yeah. So, but as Matt points out, the type of trust that we often use for people who don't need estate tax avoidance planning, and we're not looking necessarily for getting the asset protection afforded by one of those completely irrevocable trusts. Like for instance, when you buy a life insurance policy to cover your family for any taxes or anything that may cost the estate, they buy a life insurance policy. They take that life insurance policy, they put it into an irrevocable life insurance trust, which
Hmm.
takes that life insurance out of the estate too, because otherwise you'd just be adding more money into the estate to pay more tax on, right? So that's
Yes.
one of those types of trusts they use. We we use the irrevocable grantor trust to get people asset protection, get people Medicaid eligibility, and leave them in control, as Matt said, with most of the flexibility of the revocable living trust, and yet have asset protection, because the revocable trust can't give you asset protection.
Correct. Correct. And that is a mistake that misconception that I hear all the time. I have a trust. I'm not worried about Medicaid. Well, it's a revocable trust, and the misconception is that the revocable trust offers you some kind of protection, and it does not.
Yes.
It just
Yeah,
does not.
exactly. It does not. It does not at
Yeah.
all. And it is a misconception, just as the misconception that if you have a will, you avoid probate.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
know we're going to do an episode on special needs planning, but is a special needs trust irrevocable, Andrew?
Usually, a special needs trust is irrevocable, and it can be set up in different ways. And by the way, Matt, that's going to be our next topic,
Oh,
special
good.
needs trusts. We're going to talk
Wonderful.
about special needs trust in episode 7. So we'll talk a lot more about that. And Medicaid will come after that. So we have a plan. If you're following us from the beginning, by the time you finish getting through episode 10, you'll have a really good understanding of basic estate planning principles.
From two attorneys who started out of nowhere, right? And I've been practicing 23 years. I just figured that out, and it just seems impossible for the time to fly by. And the interesting thing is this is all I've ever done. I've never done any other type of law, short of a few starting of a business, just small things, but this is all we do. And I know it's all Andrew does basically
Yeah.
now. And so that is the key to having a good, I don't want to call us good attorneys, right? I don't want to pat the back, but you have to find someone who focuses in these areas. And that's exactly what we do. And we
Right.
have to be vigilant on what we do, because the laws are always changing and Medicaid is always changing. I know, Andrew, you have an issue with Medicaid now that is, never thought would be even possible in the realm of possibilities as to why they deny an application. So these are all things and reasons why you need a good estate and elder law attorney.
Absolutely. You can't go to the guy who's in divorce court on Tuesday
Right,
and then traffic court on Thursday to do
right.
your will and your trust for you on Friday. It
Well,
doesn't really make sense.
you can. It's just a matter of make sure you come see us when you pass away, or your loved ones come see us when you pass away, because there will be more time and effort that will have to be spent on those plans for sure.
If they work at all, true.
If they work, yeah,
Yeah,
right. Yeah. You'll just pay us
absolutely.
more.
Right. In my 35 years of practice, I've done a whole bunch of different things, which I've been fortunate enough to have, some breadth in the areas of practice that I have had. I first trust was somewhere around 25 years ago, and I've been practicing exclusively for the last, 13 years with, estate planning and elder law. So the point is that we do this all day long. We have the
Yes.
experience of having, let's say it, made mistakes, right? Everybody
Yep.
makes mistakes. We learn from our mistakes. We learn from the mistakes of each other. We learn from
Sure.
the mistakes of other colleagues that we're involved with. And we make sure that, when things change, we're going to have the answer for you. Because things are going
Yes.
to change with all of these areas of law. As our economy keeps moving and things keep happening, there's going to be further changes, and the amount of change, as with everything else in our world, has speeded up, right?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I mean, we already hear about phase out of Social Security. We're hearing all these things on the news. This is a program to me that is failing. It is not breaking, it's broken, is the way I say it. And so definitely changes are going to be imperative for those who are really focused on the issues. So yes, absolutely, I agree.
So
You know, I guess my other question is it hard to set these up, Andrew? Is it take a long time? Um,
people
what,
think so. People
yeah.
think so, but truly not. I'd say my process from beginning to end is generally between 30 and 60 days. It
Hmm.
can be made faster if absolutely necessary. We can do it. Generally speaking, a trust plan will take somewhere between 30 and 60 days to set up and fund. You have to make sure that you put property in, because that's another downside that we see. We see people who go to inexperienced, they must be inexperienced, because how do you let a trust leave without having all the property that should be in it transferred over to it? It wouldn't happen in my office. I don't know. I don't think it would happen in your office either, would it, Matt?
No, I think, a lot of attorneys just think that's not my job, right? Here's your trust. I did the legal work. Now you go tackle it and
Yeah,
fund it. But
here's a letter. You
yeah,
go,
go take
tells
care
you
of
how
it.
to do it. Yes.
Right. But we really need to be involved in the funding, because without funding, it's nothing. It doesn't work. What are 3 steps to creating a good plan? It's creating it with your voice and rules. It's integrating it. That's the funding. And then maintaining it, right? So you can't, without all 3, usually have a good plan. And when I say maintain, both of us have maintenance plans in our office, which people pay us annually to meet with us, to get special seminars and unlimited access to our professionals. But, ultimately, if you're not going to do that, that's okay, but you better make sure when things change, you check with us. And I don't know how if the law changes without that maintenance piece, but essentially you got to make sure that that plan is up to date.
Yeah, you get your car inspected every year. You go to the dentist to check your teeth. It's not a bad idea to also check your estate plan, because 19.7 is the number of years on average that people create a plan and then look at it again when they're not, don't have it front of mind, right? So people
Yeah,
get comfortable. They've taken care of that big elephant in the room. I have to get my estate plan done. I have to get my estate plan done. They take the papers, they throw it in their drawer, and they don't look at it again. Our clients don't do that
right.
because they are part of a community that's aware, and they're wanting to make sure that their plan works, because great planning will work the moment you walk out the door. But great planning also includes, as Matt said, maintaining that plan and dealing with the changes in your life, in your finances, in your health, and also dealing with the changes in the law. That's what our
Yes,
maintenance plans do.
absolutely. I had someone come in with a power of attorney that's probably over 10 years old. It names mom, who's deceased, and then the alternate is the daughter. And I said, well, we really need to redo this power of attorney. And they couldn't understand why. And I said, well, despite the fact that you're an alternate, so you need a death certificate to show that mom's deceased, I said, just take this to a bank today and see, well, several banks is what I said, and see which one will accept it. I guarantee you that most banks will want a letter from the attorney saying dad's still alive, that he is unable to handle his affairs. I guarantee you that they're going to ask, why did they let it sit around for 12 years? All
Right.
these things that, we don't really think about. It's not until it happens to us that we realize it, right? So it's hard to explain to a client why it's so important to keep things up to date, yet it happens all the time. I just had someone download in Ohio, the Ohio statutory form for power of attorney, and the bank won't accept it.
That doesn't make sense, but that's
No.
banks.
They
That's how
want
banks
something
operate.
drafted by an attorney. I'm like, this was drafted by several attorneys in the state of Ohio. What do we, it's the state form. I don't understand it, but this is what we deal with. And so when we talk about funding, for example, a trust, we have to make sure that it's being done properly, in that the ownership is changed into the name of the trust, not just the beneficiary. And, so we're there to help through that process, is
Yeah.
basically what it
And
comes
I
down to.
and I think that what we should do, we'll probably create an episode on funding as well. After we do the Medicaid conversation, we'll bring in a funding conversation to
Good.
tie that all up of why it's so important. But
Absolutely.
I want to say that this has been fantastic. I'm going to ask you folks to please contact us. I'm at epelg.com, info@epelg.com. We welcome your suggestions for future episodes. We welcome your comments and suggestions. Thank you very much. And I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you on our next episode.
Absolutely. And you can reach me at info@icanprotect.com. We're located in Cleveland, Ohio, and that's info@icanprotect.com. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.